are locked into the Cowbell Kingdom Podcast, frontline coverage of the Sacramento Kings. Now, here are your hosts, Jonathan Santiago and James Ham.
Welcome to the Cowbell Kingdom Podcast. I am James Ham. With me, as always, Mr. Jonathan Santiago. We have on the line, live from the downtown plaza, Blake Ellington of, Here We Stay, Bleed Black and Purple, Sacktown Royalty, and a plethora of other things. Blake, what's going on, man?
Just hanging out and having lunch down here at the downtown plaza. The food court's still open, so every now and then I come down here and have lunch and check out what's going on.
Wow, the food court is still open. That is very interesting. Yeah. So what's going on down there? I mean, can you eat through all the dust?
I can. I don't know if I should, but I am. So actually, that whole area is kind of blocked off from everything else that's going on. So you really can't tell much is happening from I guess it's the west end. Although they have a wall blocked off to the right of the food court on the top and bottom level. But it's kind of cool. They have a little door down over by the King store that was just open now. As I walk by, and you can kind of see like the inside is just filled with massive amounts of rubble, like along the main corridor of the mall.
Hey, Blake, just in terms of the foot traffic that's around the downtown plaza these days, do you see a lot of people just kind of coming through and just eyeing the construction from the exterior?
Yeah, it's funny. Most of what's going on is happening on the I guess the south side along L Street, and I don't think some people know that they're walking into it when they first get there. But I've walked by several times, and they just kind of look up from their phones and see what's going on, and immediately start taking photos and everything, and like hanging out for a while. So yeah, on that side of the mall, there's a lot. There's actually quite a bit of traffic just around the whole area, and I don't even know if it's for that. But the mall still gets decent traffic, even though there's nothing down here.
Blake, we've seen some of your stuff on Sacktown Royalty where you're sort of, got like a running journal of this. What are we day 10, day 9 of the demolition? What have you seen progress so far? How is it looking from, what you can see?
Well, it's got like I said on the south side on L Street, like there in between 5th and 6th Streets, that's where the bulk of the work is happening. And I mean, just from Thursday, Friday of last week until now, there's been an amazing amount of activity over there. At the end of last week, they tore in 2 large holes into the Macy's building, but that was just to get equipment in and out of that area. And then like right next to that is the old pre-flight lounge where a lot of the demolition stuff happened yesterday. And that area, I mean, there's no walls left on that building, and that's basically a building that is like an entire block. And it looks like the construction is actually going inward into the middle of the mall from L Street in, because they've pushed in quite a bit to the north just from what they did yesterday.
So, one of the concerns for some folks regarding the construction of the new arena was the traffic and how the construction in that area would affect traffic in the downtown core. What are you seeing in terms of that as the demolition kind of hits its stride here?
Honestly, I haven't seen hardly any issues with traffic from what I've seen. I mean, it seems to be flowing pretty well in the mornings, and even during rush hour. I came by yesterday, and I didn't really notice any change from a normal workday without all this stuff going on. So from what I've seen, I haven't seen any issue in that regard. They've got sometimes they have guys out there flagging traffic and that sort of thing, but most of the time it seems like it's just flowing as normal. Some cars just kind of slowing down around that particular area on L Street to see what's going on, but yeah, I haven't really seen much issue.
What about the noise levels too? You know, that was another area of concern for opponents of this. Just how noisy has the demolition been, and has it been noticeable at all?
Well, they're doing work right now, and I'm sitting outside over, like I said, in the food court. I can't hear anything. But when I was down there yesterday morning, early morning, it didn't seem to be that loud. It seems like the equipment they're using, it doesn't seem to be causing too much of an issue, because even I was standing right next to it, and there was some loud noise, but it wasn't too bad. And they're doing it piece by piece, so it's not a constant, it seems like, of noise. So mainly it's just a lot of horns and the sounds. I don't know my construction vehicle names, but bobcats, whatever, when they're backing up, the noise they make. I mean, that's the majority of what it is.
So Blake, you're known as kind of our go-to guy for all the arena stuff, but let's talk some Kings action as well. The schedule getting released the other day. The Kings have 7 national television games. Of course, they've got the new TV deal with Comcast that's going to come into play this season. Is there any one particular game that you're looking forward to this upcoming season of Sacramento Kings basketball?
Well, I think everybody's looking forward to when Isaiah comes back. I think that's going to be a fun game, just to see how he responds. And, the matchup between him and Darren Collison should be fun to watch. I know that he wants to really give it to the Kings, and I know that they're aware of that. So, it'll be fun. I'm sure him and DeMarcus will have some fun back and forth. That's one of the main games I think that everybody's kind of circled, and obviously the marquee games, the Heat and that type of thing. But I think that's probably going to be a key matchup this season.
Blake, news broke on Thursday morning that Isaiah Thomas had actually undergone left wrist surgery. Does that surprise you at all? Because, while we were watching him, we saw a noticeable drop-off in his production somewhere around January, early February. He complained of wrist issues. But is it surprising to you that he inks his deal and then all of a sudden he's out until training camp?
Yeah, that is interesting. Like you said, we had heard a lot of that all season last season, that he, had issues with the wrist. And it did seem to bother him a little bit there, like you said, towards the end of the season. But the timing of that is interesting, and who knows? Maybe that the Kings know a little bit about that, and that may have factored into their deal, and that's something that really hasn't been talked about much. But maybe that was something in the back of their minds. They knew that was an issue. That is like you said, that's interesting timing that came out.
Blake, and while we have you, we don't want to keep you all day. We know you got to go back to work, leave your lunch hour, and escape the mall. But DeMarcus Cousins, Rudy Gay fighting it out for Team USA. What do you think a berth for either of those guys, both of those guys, would mean for the city of Sacramento and Sacramento Kings?
Well, I think it'd be huge. Obviously, everybody looked at the schedule yesterday, and I think one of the main things they looked at was how many nationally televised games do they have, because that's always kind of a big deal in recent years with the team not being so great. And so that's something that I think fans always look for, ways that, to get Sacramento on the map. And I think that would be definitely a good step in that, considering how things have gone in recent years. So it sounds like everything with Rudy, he has a good shot. Hopefully DeMarcus will be okay with this knee issue that just came up today. But and also I think not only that, I think it would probably help quite a bit if those two guys had some extra time over the summer to play together, and that might help some of the chemistry going into next season. They seem to like each other pretty well, and a little extra time can't hurt on that end.
Very good point, Mr. Ellington. Very good point. All right, so Blake Ellington, live from the downtown plaza. Blake, thanks so much for joining us. I'm sure we'll have you on as they keep tearing this thing down and building it back up. It's great to have somebody who is working down there and has time to pop in and give us updates.
Yeah, thanks, guys. And I did want to say, we're doing these updates on Sac Royalty, so if anybody is down in downtown and works down there and can walk by and snag photos, just send some photos to askSactownRoyalty@gmail.com, and we'll try to get your photos up on the site.
Very cool. Blake Ellington, Bleed Black and Purple, Sacktown Royalty, and a bunch. Oh, here we stay. Thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you, Blake.
All right.
Thanks to Blake Ellington joining us on the Cowbell Kingdom podcast this week. I'm Jonathan Santiago with James Ham as usual. And the news of the day, James, Team USA reconvening in Chicago for another round of training camp and an exhibition match on Saturday against Brazil. And DeMarcus Cousins going down with a right knee injury. Knowing DeMarcus and being around him, he's like an Iron Man, and so
he is.
It wouldn't surprise me if this was nothing serious, because DeMarcus rarely gets hurt. So they're just taking precautionary measures. That's what Jerry Colangelo told media in Chicago today, that he's going to have an MRI. And he won't play in the exhibition on Saturday, which is unfortunate considering, we had talked about this being a big matchup for DeMarcus to really show his value and worth to this Team USA roster because of the size that Brazil boasts on their front line with Thiago Splitter and Nene and Anderson Varejão, and now he's going to be out.
Yeah, John, I think the winner of the day is Rudy Gay, who once again throws a zinger. The thing you have to love about Rudy Gay is that he's such a pro's pro and he's so quiet, but he has a way of just speaking his mind. And, according to Mark Spears, he said, I talked to him on the way out, meaning to Marcus. I think he'll be okay. I hope he's just being a drama queen.
That was pretty funny.
It's great. I mean, it's the same thing when we asked Rudy Gay about O.J. Mayo, and, he popped off with I guess when you're injured in Wisconsin, you eat. Yeah, so the dude has a dry sense of humor, and I think it plays really well. Everyone's holding their breath. Everyone's anxious and nervous. The one good thing about DeMarcus Cousins, not only is he extremely durable, but he's a ground-based player, and he's a guy who doesn't use like his incredible leaping ability to dunk a ball. He has a 9'5" standing reach. It's not like the dude's Blake Griffin. He doesn't fly in all over the place and hammer down balls. So he tends to not get injured as much as others, and that's always been sort of his thing. He did miss a few games this year due to injury, but overall, I think he bounces back. It's a bummer he doesn't get to continue on in Chicago, and then it's a bummer he's going to miss that Brazil game, but he still has time, and yeah. I think the Kings have a very good shot of having two players on the national team.
Yeah, if anything, again, I mentioned how it's disappointing to not get a chance to see him go up against Thiago Splitter, Nene, and Anderson Varejão, that Brazilian front line. But at the same token, USA is going to roll out, the bigs that they have against those guys, and maybe they'll see, look, okay, we don't have – what happens when we don't have a big presence like DeMarcus Cousins in the middle against a front line like that in this exhibition game, and maybe his presence or his absence is sorely missed in that game, and that actually helps his case going forward. So
you're going with the absence makes the heart grow fonder.
Yeah,
I like it. I like it, John.
Exactly.
I like it.
And with Rudy, the thing is, like, if any other guy said that about DeMarcus, I think he would take that very, very personally. But DeMarcus has great respect for Rudy, and Rudy can get away with saying those things because he is a veteran, and he is a guy who's proven that he is a star player at the NBA level. So for him to say something like that, they give a little zinger to DeMarcus regarding that injury. It's funny, but at the same time, he can get away with it.
Yeah, I think he can. And, I really, Blake made such a great point there. We hadn't really talked about this. People forget that DeMarcus Cousins and Rudy Gay really only played, 40 games together total. Yeah. That's all they've. So getting that extra time is important. It would be a good thing, especially on that type of stage where they really have to rely on a small team. And it's, you're way out in the middle of nowhere. You're in Spain. You're spending all your time with the same group of people. You move in a roving horde because that's the way that security and everything else is going to be heightened with those guys. And it's a good thing for those two to get to spend quality time and build some continuity, build some, team chemistry that they can bring back to Sacramento. And we've talked a lot about what DeMarcus is learning here and can bring back. But those are things that we already know that Rudy Gay possessed. I mean, he's played 27 total games for Team USA over his between like 2005 and 2012 or 13, I think it was. He's got a lot of experience in international play. That's a good thing. It's something that you want on your team. And now the Kings could possibly have two guys that have a lot of that experience. And I think it can't hurt at all.
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense to have both Rudy and DeMarcus on this team. I laid it out in a post earlier in the week about Rudy's chances making this USA basketball roster, and even though he wasn't an original invitee to the Las Vegas minicamp, you look at the small forwards that he's competing against for a spot on this roster, Chandler Parsons and Gordon Hayward, and he brings, something extra that those guys don't. I think of the two, between Parsons and Hayward, I think Hayward is a lot more versatile. He did bulk up, that was noticeable when I saw him in Las Vegas a couple weeks ago at USA training camp. So maybe he is capable of playing a little bit more power forward in the international game. But I still think that Rudy Gay, he's got a wingspan that's above 7 feet, which allows him, to play a little bit of power forward for Team USA if they need it. And the experience. You mentioned it there that he's a guy who's been in the USA basketball program since 2005. He's won a gold medal at the World Cup in 2010, competed for a spot on the Olympic roster in 2012. So he's been a part of this revamped program with Jerry Colangelo and Mike Krzyzewski for the last 6 years. So he's familiar with what everything is all about. He's familiar with Coach K's style. So I think that they would need him, and to have DeMarcus also on the team, we talk about it with him bringing size that Team USA needs against Brazil and Spain. I think it makes a lot of sense, and it wouldn't even surprise me if come the opening game against Finland on August 30th, that you see both Rudy Gay and DeMarcus Cousins starting for Team USA, in the World Cup. So I think it makes a lot of sense to have both those guys on this roster.
I totally agree. Now, John, I wrote about this for Sunday Musings. Rudy Gay is really taking a huge risk here.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure that if I'm his agent and his people, that I'm comfortable with the risk he's taking. So I'll just say that, I wouldn't doubt at this point if between now and the end of the month that the Sacramento Kings and Rudy Gay revisit extension talks pretty heavily, because this is a huge gamble. And if I'm Jerry Colangelo and Coach K, I don't know what Rudy Gay playing says about the other players that are not playing. And it's something that I think at some point should be addressed, that Kevin Durant just backing out of nowhere. Of course, a lot of people are speculating that had everything to do with a gigantic contract that he signed, with Adidas?
Under Armour.
Oh, with Under Armour. My bad.
I think they're still in discussions right now, but he has an offer, I believe, on the table from Under Armour and Nike, and Nike is the sponsor of USA Basketball. So
yes, of course. So I don't know if that played into it. I hope that that's not the case, that it was something that petty. I get it, physical and emotional exhaustion, but a guy like Rudy Gay is playing in the last year of a $19.3 million deal. No one in the league thinks he's worth $19.3 million. It is what it is, right? People have really beat down Rudy Gay for the fact that he makes too much money for what he does. But he's the one guy. I mean, LaMarcus Aldridge, just backed out early in the season and said, look, I got a contract I got to worry about. I'm not going to go. Kevin Love, I might get traded. I'm not going to go. And I get some of these players that play deep into the playoffs, like Kawhi Leonard, LeBron James. I get those guys, but there are other guys that probably should have been here if they wanted to be on the Olympic team. And I think that when you look at what Rudy Gay is putting out there on the line, number one, is commendable. And number two, do you rethink the way that you invite players to Team USA for the Olympics in 2016? I mean, do you have to revisit the way that this entire process works? Because clearly these guys are making arbitrary decisions that are best for them that aren't best for Team USA. And I mean, it seems like you should probably get guys who are more committed, so then that way you can field a competitive team and not worry about possibly not making it to the Olympics because you have to win a tournament now, and maybe you'll have to come back and win something else because you didn't win a gold medal this year. You have major injury that happens, you've got a guy back out at the last second. I mean, this is kind of chaotic, and I think for Team USA they really should look at this like in a different light. How do we build a team that will stick together and that will continue on?
Yeah, I mean, they had continuity going from 2006 into 2008, the World Championships in 2006. I got to look at the roster again, but I believe they had Carmelo, they had LeBron, they had Dwayne Wade, they had Chris Bosh. They had, pretty much the same roster, going into the 2008 Olympics, the Redeem Team, on that World Cup team in 2006. So there was continuity there, but from 2010 going into 2012, you had Kevin Durant on the 2010 team. But for the most part, you didn't have LeBron James, you didn't have Carmelo Anthony, you didn't have Chris Bosh, you didn't have all those guys on that same roster that made it to the Olympics. And so, it always, in reality, James, you know how this is always going to have to play out. There's always going to have to be a wake-up call. And if USA doesn't win the World Cup this year, and if they don't win gold in 2016 in Rio de Janeiro, of course, there's going to be, once again, clamoring from the media and from the public to revisit how USA basketball prepares for international competition. Because, when it boils down to it, you look at the teams like Spain, you look at Argentina in the past, Brazil, they have their players, they have their big guys like Pau Gasol, Marc Gasol, Serge Ibaka, Manu Ginobili in the past. They are always committed every single summer to playing with their national team, regardless of contract situation, regardless of whatever is going on with their NBA status. Those guys have always come out every single summer and put it on the line. And there's always costs, and there are always pros and cons to that, because you look at what Manu Ginobili, look at how banged up he is at this later stage of his career from years and years of competing on the Argentinian national team. So it's never going to be perfect, but I think, with the continuity of having the same coach and Coach K, run this program for almost a decade now, and having players who, come in and train every single summer and are part of this system, I think that helps in terms of building the program the right way. And it won't ever be perfect, honestly. It's never going to be that way, but they're trying to keep this thing right as they head into the World Cup and into another Olympic cycle coming up here.
Yeah, I think, John, also on top of that, is it fair for Kevin Durant, LeBron James, whoever else, Dwight Howard, LaMarcus Aldridge, to just show up for 2016 and say, hey, we're ready to play in the Olympics. Thanks for getting us here, guys. You're not on the team because we're better than you. I mean, is that fair?
Yeah, that was a problem. I mean, going into past Olympics, back in, 2000, when USA would just have guys show up. They barely won the gold medal in Sydney with that roster. And then in 2004, we all know what happened. They did not win gold with Argentina, winning it all there in Athens. So that's been a problem where guys just show up the summer of. But granted, they have the experience of, again, the national team convening summers before and having the same coach. I think one of the major issues before was that they would name the coach. You would find out Larry Brown is coaching the 2004 Olympic team, that summer of, or I don't remember who coached. I think it was Lenny Wilkins who coached the 2000 Sydney team. You'd find out that the coach was put in place that same summer, whereas you have the consistency of having Coach K running this program with different assistants. Granted, Tom Thibodeau and Monty Williams are new members to the staff, but Coach K has been running this program for almost a decade there, and I think that helps in terms of plugging and playing different players into the system.
Of course. All right, John. We're seeing a couple of additions here late. The Kings did add another point guard, Deontay Burton from UNR. Is this just camp filler? What do you think about him, Eric Moreland? We're seeing these small additions. Is any of this really part of the main team, or do you think these are just like camp invite type stuff?
I think they're guys who are camp invites, but watch out for them in Reno because, of course, with the affiliation with the Bighorns, we could be seeing Deontay Burton and Eric Moreland. I think we will be seeing for sure Eric Moreland. We'll see how Deontay Burton performs in training camp and in preparation here leading up to the season with the Sacramento Kings, but we saw this last year where they brought in a guy that they really liked, gave him a camp invite, and Trent Lockett, he made the tough decision to stay with the Reno Bighorns for the season when he could have went overseas and probably had more lucrative deals over there. So, I mean, it's with players like Deontay Burton, it's going to be all up to him if he feels like, okay, let me compete for a training camp. Let me compete for a spot on this team. More than likely, with the way the roster is set up now, I don't really see him making it. I still think they need another point guard or another guard with more veteran experience, not another rookie like Deontay Burton in the mix. But it'll be up to him, come following training camp and preseason, whether or not he wants to remain a part of this Sacramento Kings system and take a chance and play in Reno with the Bighorns. So I don't mind the move. Again, we talk about this past draft being very, very deep.
Yes.
So to have a guy like that who's part of the program, so to speak, come in and compete for a spot in training camp. Maybe not make it, but head out to the D-League affiliate and spend some time out there. It's not bad to have. It's not bad to have at all, I think.
Yeah, John, it seems like, this team needs a fifth guard no matter what.
Yeah.
So I don't know who that fifth guard is going to be. Clearly, I don't think it's Jared Cunningham. I don't think he's been invited to training camp yet. That's yet to be seen. So as of right now, they do have Wayne Ellington until they stretch provision him and waive him, which is what everyone thinks that they're going to do with Wayne Ellington. But, you're looking at a team that is still lacking a piece. You've only got Stauskas and McLemore at the two guard. You've only got, Ray McCallum and Darren Collison at the point. So who is the fifth? You always have to have five just because of injury's sake and everything else. And we haven't really heard much about someone else. Marshawn Brooks just signed in Italy, so he's not coming back. He's not going to be a scoring guard off the bench for this team. So this roster is still in such flux, John. There's still so many things that have to be done before the season starts, or early in the season, or by the trade deadline. So I think it's really interesting that Burton may or may not make the team. I would assume that the Kings will also bring in some sort of veteran leader that can do some things off the bench, or that can support both the one and the two, a combo guard of sorts or something like that. But we're kind of in a situation where they still have roster spots to fill, or at least position spots to fill, because I don't think they have enough in the backcourt to support this team going forward.
Yeah. All right, James, let's transition here and wrap up the podcast with a discussion of the schedule that just came out yesterday. We talked about it some with Blake Ellington here, and I'm shocked. I personally am shocked that the Kings have 7 national television games this season.
What's up with that? Up with that?
I really don't understand why the national TV is clamoring to have the Sacramento Kings. Especially, they've got 2 TNT games against the Chicago Bulls on November 20th and then December 11th against the Houston Rockets. They've got 1 ESPN game, and then NBA TV will be picking up the Comcast broadcasts against the Indiana Pacers, the Detroit Pistons, and the New York Knicks. Now, granted, the schedule makers were very choice in the games that they picked. They only have 1 national TV game that's past December, the March 14th contest that's not even at home against the Washington Wizards. So I think the national TV audience will be getting to see the best of the Sacramento Kings early on, in November and December there. But that to me was a shocker in terms of the national, or in terms of the schedule for the upcoming season.
Clearly, they have an idea of what this team is going to look like that doesn't mesh with what you or I or some of the other people in the basketball world believe that this team is going to be. I don't think that this is a strong team. I think last year's team was just as good as this year's team. I'm not sure how this is going to play out, but I could definitely see some of those national TV games disappearing or being swapped out relatively early. But then again, maybe we're wrong. Maybe this team is an up-and-comer. Maybe it is a surprise team of the year, and you're going to see some really good things here. That's yet to be seen. I think we have a long way to go, but that is a shock, John. I think, again, the Isaiah Thomas, December 26th game is the game to watch.
I would have put that one on national TV if I were the schedule makers, honestly, instead of the, say, Houston Rockets, or even the Thunder. That would have been a game that I would have liked to have seen on national TV, because we know that Isaiah is going to try and go off for 50 or something against the Kings.
Of course he is. He's going to try to go nuts, but that doesn't mean that he will go nuts. And it also, it's one thing we also know, it doesn't mean that the Phoenix Suns will win the game just because he decides to go crazy and score a bunch of points.
He may score a bunch of points and they still lose.
Yes.
They did beat the Suns. They beat the Suns early on in the season 2 times last year, but that was with a completely different roster too.
Yeah, John, and the other thing I really like, I love the 9-day break at All-Star Weekend. Basically amounts to like a week off, right? So I think that was spectacular of the NBA to listen to the players. A lot of the guys that play on All-Star Weekend, it's usually like a 5-day break, and 3 of those are full-on All-Star Weekend events. And then you got to travel there the day before, you got to travel back the day after, so you end up with no time off at all. A lot of these guys need a break in the middle of the season. It's a long, long season, and this is a good thing. Some of these players, you could have a guy basically get like a 2-week injury and not miss a game leading up to this, So if you're all-stars, if you do have an all-star, which I think the Kings probably, if DeMarcus Cousins is healthy, I think he's got a really good shot at the all-star team this year, especially with his Team USA play.
And with Kevin Love, his looming, his looming departure from the Western Conference. I think Akis over at Sacktown Royalty wrote about that. that could actually help DeMarcus's chances of making the All-Star team, and I would agree with that. So that could help him out in terms of making the team this year.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I that is something that could help. And I think basically Cousins, is a guy who's going to be amped to go play in that because he hasn't got to go. He's been to All-Star Weekend as part of the rookie squad, if I'm not mistaken. But
I would also love to see DeMarcus in the skills challenge. Would anybody else want to see that too? I think he would embrace an invite. We should start like a campaign or something. Send DeMarcus Cousins to the All-Star Weekend skills challenge because I think he would win it too.
Well, I would love to see Stauskas in the three-point shootout.
Oh yeah.
Kid's got all kinds of range, and then wouldn't it be cool to see Macklemore against Stauskas rookie sophomore game?
Yeah,
that's a possibility. I mean, there's all kinds of potential here because the Kings are going to rely on young players. Ray McCallum, young player, will play substantial minutes. Ben McLemore, substantial minutes. Again, Stauskas, substantial minutes. So All-Star Weekend is going to be – I like it. It also, there's a good chance it will be an All-Star Weekend because these players are going – and it's in New York, right? And It just gives you that extra time where you don't have to race back and be back for a game the next day. So I think it's a good thing. I like that they listen to the players because last year at All-Star Weekend, the players really talked a lot about this.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense to have this extended break here. Any other games that you're looking forward to watching? I wrote about it earlier today. There are a couple interesting contests that stick out to me. The New Orleans Pelicans. At first, I didn't mention it in the post the other day, them playing against the Pelicans, because, okay, we've already been through that. Tyreke Evans has already played 2 games here as a former Sacramento King. But they have a couple other guys on their roster that are ex-Kings as well in John Salmons. I'm sure the world is waiting for that. The Sacramento Kings fan base is waiting for the return of Salmons. But Jimmer Fredette, we'll see. We'll have to see whether or not he makes their roster first and foremost. I wouldn't be surprised if Jimmer doesn't wind up making the final roster of the Pelicans. But if he is on the Pelicans, that would be interesting. If he's an active member of their rotation, coming back to Sacramento for the first time as an opponent. The Isaiah Thomas matchup on December 26th is always is one to look out for. Of course,
there's going to be a lot of emotion in that night. A lot of fans are really bummed out that Isaiah Thomas is gone, and for that matter, even Jimmer. There are a lot of number 7s in the stands. Always at every game, there's a ton of number 7s. So I wouldn't doubt that Jimmer homecoming would be substantial as well. Those are, you bring up, those are both huge games for the Kings because I don't know that you typically sell out to Suns games in the season, and I don't think you sell out to Pelicans games. But they had the potential to sell out because of that, because of those players that are coming in. Again, not John Salmons, but certainly the other guys that.
Why not John Salmons?
I don't think the Raptors game is going to sell out because Patrick Patterson and Chuck Hayes are coming back.
They should.
Yeah, or and Gravis is on that team as well. So there's 3 former Kings. The Knicks game, it's possible.
Come on,
there's
Travis Outlaw, everybody.
Huge Travis Outlaw,
the contingent.
Quincy AC contingent in Sacramento.
There's gonna be a lot of people wearing like fake beards in the stands that game.
Well, Reggie Evans will just wave to them.
He'll think they're honoring him.
Well, and it's always possible that people won't even notice that Quincy Acey's not on the team because Reggie Evans is still on the team.
Yeah,
so
they might
you just
mistake
never know. Yes. So outside of that, John, it's a regular season.
Home opener. That's always fun.
Yeah, the home opener. And
Golden State.
It's the Warriors.
They always play good against the Warriors, but we'll see. It's a different team. We got different teams here now versus the last few years, so that should be fun. And these national TV games, those are guaranteed sellouts. If anything, that helps the Sacramento Kings with their sellout quota for the season because each one of those games are going to sell out.
Well, and I think
I would expect
12 sellouts, which is more than the previous 5 years combined.
Yeah.
Yeah. So pretty good showing.
All right. On that note, let's wrap up this edition of the Cowbell Kingdom Podcast. Let's thank Blake Ellington for joining us once again. update the demolition of the downtown plaza, and we'll be back for another episode next week. Until then, I'm Jonathan Santiago for James M, and you have been listening to the Cowbell Kingdom.